Hello, my name is Matthias, and what if I told you that you can win Fantasy Premier League without doing a single change throughout the whole season? No transfers, no chips used, no captaincy changes, and you can still come out on top and win Fantasy Premier League entirely. That has actually been possible for a couple of the past few seasons, and that's by making a zombie team, as it's called, where you basically have the same team from Game Week 1 until Game Week 38 without doing a single change to anything with your team. So the reason that I have that data available to me is because I do write an FPL guide every single summer. I have done this since the 2018-19 season. And in those guides, I've made like the best zombie team of the previous season every single year. So that's why I have 6 teams that I'm going to show you eventually with a lot of throwbacks, a lot of fun players that were such good value back in the day. So I think this video is going to be pretty helpful in terms of understanding value, understanding what happens from year to year with like how we value defenders versus attackers, because these teams are pretty different from each other. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff to look at with this team. But first of all, I'm gonna just show you some stuff from the FPL guide that I've made. And yeah, as you can see here, there's a lot of content here. There's new players reviews, new manager reviews, potential squads like the template squad, for example. You can look at that. But one of the squads you can check out is the whole season squad, aka the zombie team. And in here, I have a walkthrough throughout like all the seasons that we're gonna look at in this video. But we also have a full team eventually, which is the team that I think is the best suited for playing like the zombie leagues. I know there are some leagues that play like this the whole season. They can't do any transfers, and this is my best attempt as of the 24th of July, which is when I'm recording this video. But anyways, this is my suggestion, and as you can see, there are some changes from what you normally see from a Game Week 1 team. For example, we have Ivan Toney as a striker. He's not going to play until January, but that's sort of part of the whole deal, because you're going to have a strong bench with bench players that come in for your players that can't play. And that's why Toney, who doesn't play at the start of the season, he'll have an auto sub in Mbeumo throughout the start of the season when Mbeumo plays without Toney. And as we know, Mbeumo is super good without Toney. So I think Mbeumo will be a fantastic value at the start of the season, not so much at the end of the season. He'll still be good value at the end of the season. That's why he's first bench. But yeah, he's going to get a lot of points at the first half of the season. Then the second half of the season, Toney will likely play a lot more matches and keep Mbeumo out of the squad for a couple game weeks at least. But anyways, there are some other fun things about this team as well. I guess like Haaland is the obvious one. He's the captain. He's the captain in pretty much any single Game Week 1 squad you can have. Even the zombie squad, I still think he is the best value throughout the whole season as a captain for 14.0. I do not have Mohamed Salah, which is going to be really interesting, because looking back at these zombie teams, the best valued players every single season, you'd be surprised how valuable Salah is. So maybe I'm making a mistake without having Salah in this team, but that's also why I have Salah in my Game Week 1 team personally, because he's always amazing value, as we'll see with the previous few zombie teams. But anyways, we have Rashford and Saka, who are really popular picks as well, Stupina and Gabriel. I feel like these players are popular picks for a reason, so I don't feel like any reason to change for accounting for the whole season. You have a couple other interesting players, Udogi or however you say it. I think he is a fantastic value player. He's currently in my own Game Week 1 squad. You can see that video from my previous Game Week 1 squad from a couple of days ago. But yeah, you also have Moussa Diaby. I added him just because he's a new player. He's just a fun player to talk about. So I think he is still fantastic value though for 6.5. So I think he might be the best 6.5 midfielder, but close competition between him and Mitoma and Eze and a couple other 6.5 good midfielders really. I also have Sterling, who has also a couple entries in the zombie teams of the season in years past. I also have Nkunku, new player for Chelsea. I think he's going to smash through that 7.5 price tag. And Ivan Toney as well. He's also a regular in these types of zombie teams. And I think he's going to be undervalued because he doesn't play at the start of the season, which shouldn't really account for his value, because when he's back playing, he's going to be tremendous value once again. But anyways, enough about this team, enough about the current guide, which you can check out. There's a link in the description. We're going to go through the past few seasons of the best zombie teams that you could have possibly had and see how well they have done overall, or how well they would have done overall if you had done the same team throughout the whole season. So going back to this past season, the overall rank is actually 72 overall. Was not enough to win Fantasy Premier League in general. Still, it's a really strong team. We have, as you can see, 3 premiums, Haaland, Salah, and Kane. It proves that you can definitely have 2 premiums at the start of this season. Like last season, having 3 premiums was the way to go. So why not have 2 premiums this season? Because I know Haaland is a bit more expensive, but at the same time, you can still afford 2 rather than 3. But yeah, Haaland is the clear MVP of the season, 272 points times 2. That gives you 544 points from Haaland alone. Kane was also amazing, 263 points. And you also get 38 vice-captain points, because in the game weeks that Haaland didn't play, Kane actually played really well, including the final game week against Leeds when he got 16 points and Haaland didn't play. So yeah, Haaland as captain, Kane as vice-captain is the way to go. And as you can see from this team as well, a bunch of Man United and a bunch of Arsenal players as well, who were really good value because they really performed better than expected. Trippier is also should be a shout for MVP as well. If not for Haaland, Trippier would be the clear MVP, 5.0 and 198 points. Fantastic from him. So he's also a great player. From the bench, you can see Aston Villa. They were really good towards the end of the season, and that's usually when the bench is called upon, because the end of the season is where you get a lot of blank game weeks and a lot of weird stuff happening. So that's why you get a lot of substitutions in that period, and that's when you needed Aston Villa players. Ramsey and Mings got a lot of points towards the end of the season, and a lot of those points were accounted for in this team. So you can see Ramsey off the bench contributes with 101 points, Mings contributes with 55 points, and then finally Castagne comes in for like a few game weeks. So the third bench player is not really that important usually. Sometimes he is, but in this season, Castagne provided 31 points off the bench in I think it was like 4 or 5 game weeks he added those points. Other interesting thing about this team is the goalkeepers. You have David Raya as the clear best value goalkeeper, but Ortega as well had the best points per match. I think he played 2 or 3 matches and got 23 points. So obviously he's the starter, and whenever Ortega doesn't play, which is pretty much every single game week apart from like 3 game weeks, Raya comes in with all of his points, and Raya was the best value goalkeeper last season at 4.5, which is also interesting to see. Also should be noted, this defense, 5.0, 4.5, 4.5, and then Mings at 4.5 and Castagne at 4.5. There's a reason why defenders seem so undervalued this season, and that's because they sort of didn't perform that well last season. But as we'll see in the zombie teams prior, that's not always the case. Sometimes the defense is super strong, so we'll get to see that eventually as well. But just want to talk a bit more about the whole season, the whole rank. 72 overall, it's not that good actually, considering the previous few zombie teams that we'll get to. Not the one that's coming up after, because that is the worst zombie team of them all. The 2021/22 zombie team is not that good. But yeah, Ali Jihanjarov, sorry I can't pronounce your name, but FPL Guns, he seems like a really good guy. He won FPL last season, 2,776 points. And even with triple captaincy game week 1, because technically you could use your triple captaincy in game week 1 and still sort of apply as a zombie team, because you haven't made a change from game week 1 until game week 38. But with triple captaincy game week 1, you'd get 2,760 points, because you get 13 points from Haaland in game week 1 when he scored twice against West Ham. So that's also pretty close. It's still not enough to win FPL, but it's pretty close. But let's go to the next team, which is pretty far off from winning FPL, but that's not going to be the case eventually, and I'll talk more about that later. But the previous season before that, 2021/22, the best zombie team of the season ended up with overall rank of 1,166, which is still amazing, but considering we used hindsight, it's not really that good, which it's really surprising that it's so low actually. But yeah, Jamie Pickett should also be mentioned. I think he has the most points all time. He had the most points of all time, 2,844. That's part of the reason why this zombie team, which is restricted to not making any transfers, sort of underperformed, because this season was super weird. A lot of like weird COVID postponements, a lot of weird stuff happening this whole entire season. So it was really a season where you needed to be on your toes and make transfers and make a lot of changes, and that's why the zombie team suffers this season. But as far as good players go in this season, you had Jared Bowen as the MVP, 206 points with a starting price of 6.5, which is obviously amazing. Once again, you have Salah. He has always been like the best captaincy choice, and yeah, this season was no different. 12.5 doesn't really matter. 530 points if you combine 200 and whatever times 2. Math is not my strongest side. 265 points times 2. You get Salah's total points. So yeah, Salah as always really good. Ivan Toney once again in this team. That's why I have him in my prediction for the best zombie team for this coming season, because he's been the best value striker the past 2 seasons. So obviously he has gotten a price rise because of that, but I still think Toney could be a really good player in FPL, as he's always been. Also interesting with this team, you have 2 Chelsea players. You have Reece James with 141 points. This was when Tuchel took over, and James was fantastic at one point of the season, when pretty much everyone had to have him, and Chilwell. Also Matip, 5.0 defender for Liverpool. He played pretty much every single game next to Van Dijk. Got a lot of points. Trent, as always, he's always also going to be another player that shows up a lot in these teams. He's always been undervalued, and this season he's finally 8.0, and that makes him sort of an interesting pick as well in terms of his overall value. But in general, pretty good team. Another interesting thing about this team is the goalkeepers. 5.5 for Lloris and 5.0 for Fabianski. It seems like quite a lot to spend on 2 goalkeepers. So I'm not 100% sure if this is the best zombie team that you could possibly make this season, but I think this was actually made. I think I collected this team from someone from Reddit who had done like a AI sort of thing and tried to make the best team through like analytics and stuff. So apparently this is supposed to be the best team. Some of the other teams that we'll get to eventually are just my own best interpretations of what would be the best zombie teams, and sometimes that leads to number 1 overall. So yeah, but anyways, kind of a weird team. I'm not 100% sure. I might have to look more into why this performed so badly, but like I said, I think it's mostly down to the season being really weird and players not really being that good value. You see, the best striker is Dennis, 5.0, amazing value, of course. This was Emmanuel Dennis' breakout season, but still 5.0 for him, 6.5 for Tony, 5.0 for Broja. There's a reason why strikers were sort of like downplayed before last season, even though it turned out that both Haaland and Kane were fantastic and the best picks to have as strikers. So yeah, that tells you something about how the value of players change each and every year, because this season, 21-22 season, you had a really strong defense with a lot of points from a lot of defenders. So all those guys, Trent Alexander-Arnold was still 7.5 the next season. Cancelo got a little price hike as well. Matip went up to 6.0 and James went up to 6.0 as well. So yeah, the defenders in general were priced more highly the next season because of this great performance in the 2021-22 season. And that resulted in defenders not being that high value the following season. So that's something you can take into account for this team as well. Maybe defenders now, that's my idea at least. Defenders are super undervalued now. So some of the good defenders are underpriced. So that's why I have a lot of 5.0 defenders personally in my own team. So that's food for thought right there. But yeah, moving on to the 2020/21 team. And the overall rank is actually number 4 overall. This would have finished with 21 points less than Michael Kuhn, who won this year. Teddy Bears United won the whole entire thing this season with 2,680 points. And as you can see, with triple captaincy game week 1, you'd actually get 2,679, just one measly point away from winning the whole thing. Because obviously, the deal breaker between if number 1 overall had the same exact points, if number 1 and number 2 overall had the same exact points, the decider would be the least amount of transfers. So obviously the zombie team without a single transfer would beat Teddy Bears United if they both ended up with the same points. But the reason why you get 20 points from triple captaincy game week 1 this season, even though Fernandes is captain, is because for this season, Man United and 3 other teams didn't have a game week 1 fixture. So the captain actually becomes Salah, who scored 20 points, I think, against Leeds in the opening fixture. So that's actually kind of a cheeky thing there, where it would be vice captain or vice triple captain Salah for 60 points in total, 20 points as a normal player, 40 points as captain, 60 points as triple captain. But yeah, again, Salah, as always, pretty much as always in the zombie team, he's always fantastic value. Like I say, you really should consider him for your own team this season as well, because he's always fantastic value. Once again, Harry Kane, he was priced at 10.5 this season, not nearly enough. 242 points was more than enough to get into this team. Still, the MVP of the season, for me at least, is Patrick Bamford, 194 points as a striker for only 5.5. Amazing value. This is, of course, the season where Leeds were so good. Rafinha points was fantastic as well. Stuart Dallas, the legend in defense, 4.5, 171 points. Fantastic. And Jack Harrison off the bench with 85 points coming from the bench. Ben Chilwell, yet another Chelsea fullback spot in the zombie team. He was also a really good value at some points this season as well. We're going to get eventually to some other fullbacks at Chelsea who are not with Chelsea anymore, and that's going to be interesting to see as well. Should also be noted, Gundogan is probably one of the biggest heroes this season as well. 5.5 he cost, and I think from like game week 15 or something until game week 25, he was like unplayable and scored every single game, and you needed to have him in FPL to to be any good that season. So of course he makes the zombie team for only 5.5. But yeah, Heung-min Son as well, 9.0. Son is also, until this past season, he had always been undervalued in FPL, and now he's back down to 9 million this season. So I think he is also a really interesting pick, considering at least if he hasn't regressed that much. If he's back to his regular form, 9.0 is nothing for Son. That's a really good price for him to get him in. But yeah, also be noted, the goalkeeper Emi Martinez, he transferred from Arsenal to Aston Villa this season and was fantastic, especially at the start of the season. I think he sort of, the last few game weeks he didn't perform as well as he could have, and I think that's why I'm not 100% sure, but I think he ended up just short of like the goalkeeping record for most points with 186. But 186 points from your 4.5 starting goalkeeper is amazing value. So yeah, fantastic team again. Calvert-Lewin as well, 165 points. He's still living off of this season. Calvert-Lewin, he's just been injured ever since pretty much, but this was a fantastic season for him as well. So a bunch of good players in this team as well. Moving on to the 2019-20 zombie team, and this is of course the season that got postponed towards the end because of the coronavirus. So we had that weird end of the season, and the thing about that is, if you remember back to that season, of course it's also the season where Mikel Antonio scored 4 goals against Norwich. He didn't make this team, but towards the end of that season, tripling up on Man United attackers with Martial, Fernandes, Rashford, and some guy I can't really mention because of some other things, but don't think about him. But anyways, Martial is the player that I'm highlighting. 200 points from Martial. I completely forgot that he got 200 points one season, and he only cost 7.5 as a midfielder this season as well, which was crazy. So really good value. But of course, the number one valued player this season, the player that we all remember so fondly, at least some of us. I don't think I got that many points from him this season actually compared to everyone else. But Lord Lundstram, fantastic for Sheffield United. He was listed as a 4.0 defender, even though he played as sort of an attacking midfielder, scored a lot of really good goals as well, Lundstram. So he was a major reason why this team is actually the team where you got the number one overall rank if you started with this team from game week 1 until the end. And it actually wins by a lot of points as well. You can see Joshua Bull with the Bulldozers won the league, or won the whole thing, FPL overall, with 2,557 points. But this zombie team, without a single transfer, would have had 2,600 points, even without the triple captaincy in game week 1. You could have had 7 extra Kevin De Bruyne points in game week 1 if you had done the triple captaincy in game week 1, but still, you wouldn't have needed it to win the whole damn thing this season. And yeah, speaking of De Bruyne, actually, 9.5 for De Bruyne, severely underpriced. He went up to like 12 million since then, and has been like 12 million and 11.5 since then. This season he is 10.5, and I think that is fantastic value. I think he's being overlooked because he's sort of had this injury sort of thing, but now it seems like he's back. He was on the bench last friendly match for Man City, and it seems like he might be ready for game week 1. So I think De Bruyne should get a lot more consideration in our game week 1 teams this season. But anyways, there's also some things to note here. Danny Ings, I should also note on the bench here, you can see a little asterisk next to the numbers, because back in these days, I didn't account for like the bench points that they provided to the team. I accounted for it. So this number, 198 points, is not what Ings got off the bench. That's what Ings got in total. So that's why there's sort of an asterisk next to it. Because in these seasons that I've gone through, these are like 103 points from Chilwell was what he provided off the bench, but obviously Ings didn't provide 198 points off the bench. It was something less, but I didn't make the calculations back then, and I can't really access that data now. So yeah, 198 points is what Ings got in total, which is of course amazing for a 6.0 striker. This was the season where Ings scored pretty much every game week, it felt like, for Southampton. He got a major price rise to 8.5 for the following season and hasn't really been the same since, but he was amazing. Todd Cantwell, 4.5, started the season. He was amazing for Norwich. Got a lot of points off the bench as well. And you can also see triple Wolverhampton there this season. Wolverhampton used to be such a FPL favorite, and now they're like the least owned players throughout the game in total. Last season as well, no one really owned any single Wolverhampton players. They haven't really had any fun, good differential players, or even like popular players the last few seasons. But back in the day, if you remember, if you played back then, you can see Raul Jimenez, 7.5, 194 points, amazing, fantastic value, of course. But we'll get to the team before, like the 18-19 zombie team. We will also see Jimenez, and that's even better. So that's just a little teaser there. But also Adama Traore off the bench. He's a typical like good player to have on your bench. If you want to have the best zombie team, you need to have players on the bench that could be really explosive and get a lot of points in certain game weeks. That's the tricky part about the zombie teams, and why it's sort of unrealistic to sort of make a similar zombie team for the following season, because of course you have the benefit of hindsight with these teams. So the game weeks where Traore and Cantwell scored a lot of points are subsequently the same game weeks where they actually get into the squad. So that's why you sort of have, it's sort of like sort of a cheat code, because you obviously have the benefit of hindsight, but that's just the way it is. But Traore, that's the type of player you need on the bench for your zombie team. Players that could get a lot of points in game weeks, and then you just have to be lucky to get them in those game weeks where they score a lot of points. But yeah, solid team in general. I promised you more Chelsea fullbacks. Alonso, another FPL legend, only scored 66 points this whole season for 6.5, which is not that good, but he only really played for a little certain amount as well, because I think this is, I can't remember exactly what it was with Alonso. I think he played under Lampard. He got on the wrong foot with Lampard, and then I don't know, it was some kind of weird thing where Alonso only played for like a brief moment of time in the season, but during that little spell he was fantastic in FPL, as he has always been really in FPL. So he got 66 points in total, and as the vice captain in the game weeks where De Bruyne didn't play, Alonso provided 34 more points, which is fantastic as well. Also, once again, Liverpool defense, we're going to get to that even more in the next team, but Trent and Robertson for 7.0, 210 points from Trent Alexander-Arnold, 181 points from Robertson. Fantastic. That's why they're in the team. And of course, Salah again, 12.5. No worries for Salah, 233 points. He's not even the captain, and he's still the highest value player, or one of the highest value players in the game. So once again, Salah, fantastic. Jamie Vardy, 9.0, 210 points. He's also always been a really good striker. The strikers from like these teams that are not big six are usually quite underpriced if they are performing really well. So that's another reason why I think Tony could be fantastic for this season as well for value. But yeah, that's pretty much the 2019-20 season. Henderson in goal should also be mentioned. Sheffield United defense was really good this season. This was their debut season where they played really well and they challenged for like Europa League spots and stuff. So that's why they had such a big imprint on this team. Moving on to the 2018-19 season, and I promised you I was going to talk about Liverpool Defenders, and here is the only squad without Salah, actually, the only summer team without Salah, and that's because you have 3 Liverpool Defenders for super low price that score a lot of points. So Robertson 6.0, 213 points, fantastic. Van Dijk, same value, 6.0, scores 208 points, and he had also really good vice-captain weeks as well for the game weeks that Sterling didn't play. Sterling was actually the captain this season, which is interesting as well. Sterling has also been someone that has been underpriced in a couple of seasons. But yeah, Van Dijk, 208 plus 30 points for 6.0. And then obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold, this was his proper breakthrough season with 185 points for only 5.0. And he's been the best player in the game from this season onwards until now, really. And that's why he is priced the most as well. Aymeric Laporte, I think this is the infamous season where he had a couple of fantastic double game weeks. I think this was when he scored like 20 points every single time he had a double game week or something. So for 5.5, it was amazing value. This is also quite a pattern in the zombie teams. There's usually some random city defender. It's just which city defender do you choose? Last season, we obviously didn't have any city defenders, but it's been Cancelo, it's been Laporte, it's been, let's go through and see, Stones, of course, that season. So yeah, there's always like a weird city defender that seems to be like a good value play as well. Some weird city defender that gets more playing time than suspected, and that's what happened with Laporte this season and Stones in a couple of seasons after that, because Stones was out of the team for a while as well, which you should remember. But yeah, Marcos Alonso, 161 points. This is a season where he played more regularly, 161 points. Of course, Alonso is an FPL god. He was so fantastic back in the day. Once again, we have another sort of cut price Man United midfielder with Pogba, 179 points for 8.0. Fantastic for him. Eden Hazard, super undervalued at 10.5, scored 238 points this season. He was amazing. I think this was also following like a pretty poor season from Hazard, and then he showed his worth this season with 238 points and helped me beat Kevin, at least in my main league. But if you would have had this team from the start of the season, not done a single transfer, you would have ended up with over ranked number 2, I'm pretty sure. So I didn't really, this is the only season in the guide where I didn't write what the rank would be for the team. So that's why I had to go back into the archives and look at how many points Adam Levy got, and he got 2,659 points, which is obviously more than the 2,632 points this zombie team would have had. But what I also found was that Adam Levy had like a advantage of 2,000. He had an advantage of like 60 points going into the final game week. So I think this team with the 2,632 points would have had enough for the number 2 overall rank, but I'm not 100% sure about that. There might have been a team that had a really good final game week and sort of got close to Adam Levy, but I'm pretty sure this team would have finished with number 2 overall. And the main reason for that is Raul Jimenez for 5.5 only. This was Raul Jimenez's debut season for Wolverhampton. For 5.5, he would have gotten 181 points from Jimenez. And if you remember back then, Jimenez was the sort of player like Kane last season, really, where he scored like 6 points, 7 points, 9 points, 5 points. He scored pretty much every single game week. So he was never like a super popular, like, let's get him in this game week sort of transfer player. But if you had him from game week 1 until game week 38, which is obviously what we had in this zombie team, he was fantastic value throughout the whole season. And you also have a couple of Bournemouth strikers as his partners as forwards. You have Callum Wilson, 168 points for 6.0 as the attacker for Bournemouth. And on the bench, you also have Joshua King, who provided a couple points, a couple of big scores, I think, including a hat-trick against West Ham, I think he added from the bench this season. But yeah, once again, asterisk next to the name means that the bench score that they have is not what they actually provided off the bench. It's their total points this whole season. But yeah, Luka Milivojevic, 6.5. Spoilers, is actually in the 2017-18 zombie team as well for 5.0, I think. But even with the price rise the following season, Milivojevic was still fantastic value, especially off the bench, where all the times that he scored from a penalty, he got into the team because of some injuries. Probably Hazard was out some game weeks, Alonso was out some game weeks, and then Milivojevic comes in. So Milivojevic and Deulofeu, explosive players once again from the bench. That's what you need to have in zombie teams, explosive players to have on the bench. Once again, you have pretty expensive goalkeepers, 5.5 for Ederson. Interesting to see Ederson in like the best value goalkeeper, because after this season, Ederson has just been terrible value in FPL, but 169 points for 5.5 goalkeeper is pretty damn good. And Pickford for 5.0 as the backup. He probably had some game weeks where Ederson didn't play, and Pickford got a couple really nice scores as well, because Pickford is like that. He can get some mega hauls at certain points because he has those games where he has a lot of saves. So I can assume that he had a couple of those nice games where Ederson didn't play this season. But yeah, in total, interesting team. The only team where Salah wasn't in, and as we can see from the previous season, this was the season where Salah was the best he has ever been. 9.0 million for Salah, 303 points, a record-breaking 303 points total, 606 points as the captain throughout the whole season. Fantastic, and that's also enough to win the whole entire thing by quite a lot of points. Once again, 48 points actually. So yeah, Yusuf's team, Yusuf Shaikh won the whole season, but if you would have had this zombie team throughout the whole season, you would have ended up with the number 1 overall rank. And a lot of reason for that is Salah with 9.0, 606 points. Kane once again shows up. Sterling once again shows up. A couple of repeat offenders here as well. Azpilicueta, once again, another Chelsea fullback. They are usually really good value. For some reason, Chelsea have always had really good fullbacks in this game. Once again, we also have like a weird defender from Man City. Otamendi was fantastic this season, had a couple of goals, had a lot of clean sheets, had a lot of playing time for some reason. Otamendi is a really strange player. He was pretty bad in Premier League for like only like 4 or 5 seasons ago, 4 or 5 years ago. He wasn't that good in Premier League, and that's why City got rid of him. But then he started for Argentina when they won the World Cup. So yeah, Otamendi is a chapter all by himself. But Nick Pope as well, also usually really good value. Probably not this season for 5.5, but back in the day when he played for Burnley, 4.5, fantastic value as a goalkeeper. This is also Pascal Gross's debut season. He was fantastic. He's also sort of like an underrated FPL asset all time. And again, Milivojevic as well. Speaking of sort of like midfielders that get points from penalties and set pieces, Milivojevic cost 5.0 and got 144 points total this season. Yeah, so a pretty good team. And also should mention Leicester. I think this was the season where they were really close to getting top 4, or where they got top 4. Can't remember exactly, but this is obviously 2 seasons after they won the league. They won the league in 2015-16. So yeah, they got a major price rise the next season and didn't perform that well because they were in the Champions League and stuff. And then they got a price fall for this season, and they became really good value. So both were valued at 8.5. Mars got 195 points plus 16 extra points from being the vice captain to Salah, and Vardy got 183 points as well. Bobby Firmino, 181 points. This was yet another season where Liverpool were really good offensively. The interesting thing about this is no Liverpool defense. But this was before the whole Van Dijk, Trent, Robertson sort of era. This was before Liverpool were or became FPL royalty when it comes to defenders. Because you have to remember, like, these few seasons here, not this season. This was actually a season where they didn't have that much value in defense. But anyways, these few seasons here, Liverpool were actually fantastic defensively. I think it must have been this season where I think Liverpool conceded only 22 goals, which is fantastic. Like, it's not spoken enough about, like, people don't speak about that enough with Liverpool, how good they were defensively and Van Dijk and stuff. I know a lot of people are underrating Van Dijk currently, especially the impact that he had on these types of teams back in the day for Liverpool. But they had such a good defensive side, even though they had Trent at right back and he's never been the best defender and stuff. Van Dijk is always amazing. So yeah, I think Liverpool are undervalued, but that's not why we're doing this video. But moving on to like the last few things about this team. In general, Sterling as well. Gotta mention him. 8.0, super low value. The previous season was, because I think this is Pep Guardiola's first season with City. And he really unlocked something with Sterling and really helped Sterling's career massively, like he did with several other players. But Sterling had like a pretty poor season under Pochettino, or not Pochettino, Pellegrino. That's the guy. Pellegrini? I know Pellegrini, sorry. The previous season, but under Pep he was fantastic. 229 points for 8.0. That's why he got a price rise. And he still was fantastic value the following season with 11.0. He scored 468 points in total as the captain. So that's 234 points in total. Quick maths. But yeah, that's pretty much it for all the zombie teams. There's a lot more to think about when it comes to these teams. I think it's really interesting to look at the value and look at how, like, in these two teams, you had 2 seasons in a row, you had 5 defenders because they were the best value. And that probably led to like a price rise for all defenders. And then, boom, this season, a lot of great value defenders here, really, to be honest. Dallas, Cresswell, we don't always get these types of defenders, but I think this season is one of them. There's going to be a lot of 4.5 and 5.0 defenders that are really good. So yeah, I can't stress that point enough. But it's also interesting to see like the strikers. Again, really good value strikers. That has been sort of a theme here as well. And then all of a sudden this season, Dennis was the only good value striker, really. Him, Tony, and Broja as well. I didn't mention Armando Broja, but yeah, I think that's really interesting. So there's a lot of stuff to look into with these teams. I might do another video where I like look into these teams more specifically and see how many big 6 players there are, because most teams, they are predominantly made up by big 6 players. So you can just see here, you have Chelsea, City, Spurs, Liverpool, City, Leicester. I guess you could count as like a big 6 team-ish of this era, but Spurs again, Liverpool. Again here, Liverpool, City, Chelsea, City, Man United. It's usually the big teams that dominate these teams, these zombie teams back in the day. So yeah, there's a lot more stuff or a lot of more info to get from these teams. I might do a separate video on that and just do like total numbers and what value players has stood out and stuff. But I think there might be a lot of stuff there. There's probably a lot of stuff you can get out of looking through these teams more in detail. So I might do that in another video, but this video has gone on for more than half an hour. I've had a lot of fun. I hope you've had a lot of fun looking at these teams, reminiscing about some old players. Which are some of the players that you remember back in these seasons that didn't make the team? Because for me, I think especially Matt Doherty comes to mind. Like, I can't really believe that he wasn't the best value defender in any of these seasons, because he was fantastic back in the day for Wolverhampton. Maybe now that he's back, he'll provide good value. But I don't know. Are there any like good value players from these seasons that you remember that didn't make the zombie team? Please write so in the comments. It would be really fun to read and reminisce about some of the old fantastic FPL heroes of the previous seasons. Sadly, I don't have the zombie teams from the seasons before that. I didn't write a guide in 2017-18 or before that, so I don't have the best zombie teams those seasons. But maybe some people have the historical data and could make the teams eventually or so, at some point. I don't know. I know at least FPL headquarters, they have all these numbers, so they should be able to make like the best zombie teams each season. But I think it's just a really fun concept and something you can try yourself as well. This is my current suggestion. Like I said, some things I've taken information from the previous teams. I tried to go with like strikers like Tony and Nkunku, who are like 8.0, 7.5 sort of range. Obviously, you don't really have much to choose from. You don't have any 10.0 forwards and stuff this season. You only have Haaland and Kane. That's like the premium options. But I also think like the pricing in general is really good this season, with super premium prices for like Haaland, Kane, Salah, Trent, those like major players that everyone wants to get. And then you sort of have low prices for everyone else. So there's going to be a lot of different options you can go with. So I think it's shaping up to be a really fun season. So I hope you join me throughout the season. If you subscribe, you can get the videos. Like I do 3 videos now every week until the final week before the season. I'm going to do a video every day. And then throughout the season, I'm going to do a video every single weekday. So Monday through Friday, I'll have a single video. I'll have like a video where I explain more what I do throughout the season. That's going to come up eventually as well, but I'm rambling a lot now, so excuse me once again, and we'll see you pretty soon.